So we're going to read the chapter. Praise the Lord. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly, another beast, a second, like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another, and like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth, and it was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up from among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And there in this horn is like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white like as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 thousands ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. I watched then, because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain, and its body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. As for the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Then to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom, the one which shall not be destroyed. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near to one of those who stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. Those great beasts, which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Then I wished to know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its nails of bronze, which devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with its feet. And the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up, before which 3 fell, namely, that horn which had eyes, and a mouth which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints, and prevailing against them until the Ancient of Days came, and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High. And the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings, who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time, and times, and a half a time. But the court shall be seated, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and destroy it forever. Then the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominions shall serve and obey him. This is the end of the account. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly troubled me, and my countenance changed, but I kept the matter in my heart. Well, you have a really long handout. But let me set you at ease with it, okay? The first 15 pages are the same handout from the last time we met, from November 22. They're actually the same, okay? It's possible in me playing with the font a little that it might have a different page break somewhere, but it is exactly, it's the same handout you got. But I thought what happened, just a little catching up, I thought that what could happen is because we met on November 22nd, and then on November 29th we had a presbytery. And I thought on November 22nd, when we did it, we had finished, the week before, we had finished Daniel chapter 6. And I said, what am I going to do with 1 week? Because I did not want to really get into Daniel chapter 7. So I kind of sort of did some things with Daniel chapter 7 to kind of see that day as a way to introduce the chapter. So that's what the first 15 pages are. So I said, I'm going to give them to you because somebody might want them. And you won't need the old handout anymore unless you took notes on them. Okay, but it's the same thing you have. But I do want to start today by just pulling out a couple things from pages 8 and 9. So if you'll just look, we're going to jump ahead that far into the handout. Just because it'll help us to, as we get started, okay? And there's no need to go back on all of that, but this is kind of good review, as it were, to help us get our feet back on the ground as we are beginning this chapter. Because really, let me just also say, if you were here last night, Daniel really is the book when you want to understand eschatology and prophecy. And the part of the book, it certainly, absolutely, Daniel chapter 2, but then chapter 7 through the rest of the book. Those are indisputably far above every other chapter of the Bible, the most significant chapters of the Bible if you want to understand the last days. You cannot understand the idea that there is a 7-year tribulation if you don't read Daniel. You will not get that out of Revelation. You need Daniel. Revelation will make you think it's 3.5 years. It's only when you read Revelation through the eyes of Daniel that you understand it's actually 7 years with 3.5 and 3.5. So this is the big kahuna stuff. Okay, so here we go. On page 8, and I gave you that chart, and I'll repeat it again. I have it a little bit later in the handout because I just want you able to see it at another time. And right below that, it says Daniel chapter 7, verse 2, mentions the stirring of the sea. And Daniel 7 is using this metaphor of the sea similarly to the way it is used in the book of Revelation. In Revelation 13, the Antichrist is going to arise out of the sea of nations. Revelation 13:1, and then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. So there is this beast that rises out of the sea. That is the Antichrist. But then, interesting, a little later, in verse 11 of Revelation 13, there is another beast. Verse 11, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. Here the word for earth is gay, And it's usually translated as either earth or land. Most people who study last days agree that Revelation 13 now is describing two last days people, an antichrist and a false prophet. Two people. I'm not going to be the 100th person that you've heard that from, because here's where you're getting it from. So the Antichrist rises out of the sea, and I suggest the strong argument is that he is arising out of the Gentile nations of the world, out of the Middle East, around the nations that are coming around the Mediterranean, as it were. Okay, and that's where he's coming out of, and they're nations. The false prophet is a religious figure. He arises out of the earth. The same word for earth is land, same Hebrew word. So the land is often a metaphor for the nation of Israel. Therefore, I lean towards the idea that what you've got here is an antichrist who is a Gentile and a false prophet who is a Jew, and you have this connection here. That's kind of how I would put it together. So you can't blame one side or the other. Okay? It's you and me. Okay? So that's really how I would put this together. On page 9, the phrase "the land" refers to Israel over 1,000 times in the scripture. So this idea that he is arising out of the land, that's a pretty good case that he's coming out of that. Now, going over to page 10, and then we're going to jump ahead to page 16. On page 10, Daniel chapter 7, verse 2, and you can just see, I won't read it again because we already read it. Okay, you can see in verse 2, this great sea is being stirred. In verse 4 is where the four beasts start. And the first one's a lion. In verse 5, the second one is a bear. In verse 6, the third one's a leopard. And the fourth one is an unnamed animal that is a fourth beast, dreadful, terrible, and exceedingly strong. That is a lot like Revelation 13, where in verse 1 it says, "Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion." The same animals in reverse order, because Daniel's looking forward, and Revelation is looking backwards. Looking backwards upon Daniel. So Daniel becomes the key to understand the book of Revelation. Let's go ahead now to page 16. We looked at all of that. Maybe you just look at page 15 real quick, just as a reminder. And you can see you've got the unholy Trinity and the Holy Trinity. In the last days, you've got Satan, you've got the false prophet who's a religious person, and you've got the Antichrist who is a political person. And then you also have in the last days, you have God, you have Elijah, who is a religious person, he is a prophet, and then you have Moses, who is the lawgiver. People think of him as a prophet, but really he is the lawgiver. He is the government. He is not chosen by God to be the priest. His brother Aaron is chosen to be the religious leader. It is wrong thinking to think that Moses is the religious leader. Aaron is the religious leader. Moses is the political, governmental leader. And so in the last days, you really have the false prophet and the Antichrist, and probably Moses, one of the two prophets of the last days, along with Elijah, the other one, these two anointed people you've got Moses and Elijah standing against the Antichrist and the false prophet, Satan's side and God's side. And that's the picture. Religion and politics coming together. All right, page 16. Now this you didn't have. So while the Antichrist rises out of the sea of Gentile nations, the false prophet rises out of the earth. Just jumping down just a little bit. The Antichrist is a governmental leader, and the false prophet is a religious leader. And we see the same duality, if you will, of religious and political Babylon in Revelation chapter 17 and 18. One of them is religious, and one of them is political. On the religious side, in Revelation 17, we've got the downfall of religious Babylon. One of the seven angels who had the seven bowls come and talk with me, saying, "Come, and I'll show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on the many waters." I should have given you verse 2, because in verse 2 it says, "The kings of the earth commit fornication with her." So the kings of the earth commit fornication with this harlot. So this harlot is not a king. It's a religious figure who's dressed in purple. She sits on seven mountains. If we read the whole chapter, Rome sits on seven mountains. And so it's just really this picture here of the religious center of the world right there. Okay, this harlot. On the other hand, on the right side, Revelation 18, we've got political or economic Babylon. And the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her as she's brought down. For no one buys her merchandise anymore. Merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones. You can just see it, just all this money, all of this, the government, the political, the financial. So in chapter 17, in chapter 6, Revelation 16, you have the seven bowl judgments, the final seven judgments. Revelation, that's 16. 17, the downfall of the religious Babylon. 18, the downfall of the political Babylon. And Revelation 19, the return of Jesus to the earth. So there's the picture. So Babylon is destroyed at the coming of the Lord. Okay, so on page 17. The Tower of Babel was man's attempt to establish a world religion in which people worshiped humanity. That's what I mean by human worship. People worshiping humanity. We are God. Okay. In Genesis chapter 11, in fact, you shall be like God in Genesis chapter 3, knowing good from evil. That was Satan's lie. Okay. Satan has really, it's not really, his big trick is not to get us to worship him. His big trick is to get us to think that we have the right to be God. That we have the right to say, this is right and this is wrong. This is good and this is evil. That's the lie Satan wants to tell us. To not believe what the Scripture says. We do not have that right. Okay. We are called to trust God to make those decisions. And when we come to Genesis chapter 11, in fact, a little bit farther down, in Genesis chapter 1, and 2, creation happens, everything's good. Genesis chapter 3, the fall of man. Genesis chapter 4, there's two murders. And the second murder, Lamech sings about. It's a song if you look at it. He sings. I'm not saying you can look at it. No, it is a song. It's actually a song where he sings about having murdered somebody. Okay. Genesis chapter 5, you have the genealogies. That's all the chapter is. The sinful nature of man is just being passed from generation to generation. You come to chapter 6 through 9, you have the flood. What's happening at the flood? God is washing the planet clean. He's not dealing with the human heart. He's just cleansing the plate. So when the plate is clean, at the end of Genesis chapter 9, we come into Genesis chapter 10, and what do we have? We have just genealogies again, and they're being spread out all over the earth. In other words, so the sinful nature of man again is being spread out in Genesis chapter 11. And when you get to Genesis chapter 11, you have the Tower of Babel. This connection of religion and politics at the top of the page on the left, Genesis 11. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar. And they dwelt there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city." We got government now. Let's build ourselves a government, a city, and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Now we've got religion. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. By the time we get to Genesis chapter 11, we have people sounding like Satan in Isaiah chapter 14. How are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How are you cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations? For you have said in your heart, and now we have the 5 I wills of Satan. I will ascend into heaven. I will extol my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. So when we get to Isaiah 14, we see Satan saying, I'm going to be like God. I'm going to extol myself into the heavens. And in Genesis chapter 11, we have the humanity just saying, I am going to be like God. By the time we get to Genesis chapter 11, humanity sounds like Satan. That's the picture there. And so what does God do in Genesis chapter 12? He doesn't just send the flood to wipe the plate clean. He calls the first missionary. And that's what Abraham is. That's the beginning of the family of God right there. So he calls Abraham. Why does he call Abraham? Genesis 12, verse 3. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you will all the mishpacha of the earth be blessed. All the families of the earth be blessed. But that promise is going to be repeated in Genesis 18, as God is explaining to him what's going to happen with Sodom and Gomorrah, which he does in Genesis 19. But in that explanation time, in Genesis 18, the Lord says to Abram, or he says about Abram, and shall I hide from Abraham what I'm doing, since Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the Goyim, he'll become a great nation, and all the Gentiles of the earth shall be blessed in him. So when God repeats the promise of Genesis 3, he replaces the word families with the word Gentiles. The reason God saved Abraham was because and the Jews, is because he loves the Gentiles. So, and Jews know this. Tikkun olam. This idea of repairing the world is core to the Jewish understanding of our identity. Okay, what other nation would withhold the way they've attacked in response to October 7th, the way Israel has? You know, what other nation would do that? Did we do that at Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Did we do that at Dresden in Germany? When have we done what Israel has done? No country's ever done what Israel's done. Right? So, would Russia do that? Would Iran do that? Would Syria do that? What nation, name one nation that does anything like what Israel does? Why? Tikkun olam, repairing the world. Why did God save the Jew? Because he loves the Gentiles. Why did God save the Gentiles? Romans 11:11. I say then, have they stumbled? Has Israel stumbled that they should fall? Have they stumbled? Yes. Have they stumbled that they should fall? No. Certainly not. Meganoito is the Greek. It actually means, that's a ridiculous question. Stupid question. Literally what it means. Okay. It says, but through their fall, to provoke them to jealousy, salvation has come to the Gentiles. The only verse of the Bible that says the reason that salvation came to the Gentiles is right there, where it says it came to the Gentiles for the purpose of helping Israel get saved. Why did God save the Jew? Because he loves the Gentiles. Why did God save the Gentile? Because he loves the Jew. Why did God save the husband? Because he loves the wife. Why did God save the wife? Because he loves the husband. That's Bible. Like 1 Peter 3:7, likewise, husbands, dwell with your wives according to knowledge, giving honor unto the weaker vessel, so that nothing hinder your prayers. God actually says, if you don't treat your wife right, man, I'm not going to answer your prayers. But the verse begins with the word likewise. So it's two-way. So I often will say things like, you know, Gianna, why did God save you? It's not because he loves you so much. It's because he loves Izzy. And you really better take care of him or he ain't going to answer your prayers. And Izzy, why did God save you? It's not because he loves you so much. It's because he loves her. And if you don't take care of her, he's not going to answer your prayers. See, God can't bless one without the other. That's really God's plan. If you say God saved you because he loves you so much, then why would I ever sacrifice myself for her since I'm so special? And now there's no cross. It isn't about me. I wish it were. Please help it be about me. But it's not about me. And it's not about you. It's about what God can do through you to be a blessing to somebody else. God did not save the Jew because they are so special, but they are special because he's going to use them to save the Gentiles. And he didn't save the Gentiles because they're so special. No, he saved them because, and they are special because he's going to use them to save the Jew. And almost every Jew I know who gets saved is led by a Gentile. It's the only group of people for whom the indigenous principle of missiology does not work. You want to see Nigerian people get saved? Raise up a Nigerian pastor. You want to see Canadians get saved or Hispanic people get saved? Raise up one of them. You want to see Jews get saved? Send a Gentile. And that's the truth. That is really... Okay, watch. I do this once in a while. How many Jews do we have in the room? Raise your hand really high because we're going to do this. Okay? Really high. Were you led to the Lord by a Jew or a Gentile? Gentile. Jew or Gentile? Gentile. Jew or Gentile? Gentile. Jew or Gentile? Supernatural. I guess that counts. Did I miss any?
Gentile.
Gentile. Gentile. Gentile. Gentile. You know why more Jews are not getting saved? Because the church has this demonic theology that says there is something called replacement theology. It's completely selfish, completely carnal, completely demonic. Right? When the truth is, God saved the Gentile because he wants him to witness to the Jew. God saved the Jew because he wants him to love on the Gentile. That's the truth. That's Bible. Right? All right, here we go. Bottom of page 17. Then Babylon is politically correct religion that exalts man. So it's no surprise then that the beasts of Daniel chapter 7 arise out of both the earth and the sea. Going over to page 18. All right, so I'll read those verses again. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. So just as there are four winds, there are also four beasts, which represent four great world empires. The first of the four empires is Babylon. So I say the way I said it is the first of the four winds blows on one of the four beasts, Babylon. Okay, now this first beast is like a lion. Lions are the king of the beasts. They represent royalty, ferocity, strength, destructiveness, courage, rapacity, and fearsomeness. Now, rapacity, I kind of knew what the word was, but I thought everybody may not know what the word is. So I looked it up, and frankly, none of the definitions helped me to explain the word. But I have a picture that I can tell you. This will help you understand rapacity. Imagine an eagle or a vulture flying down, or a hawk, and grabbing that whatever it is with ferociousness. That's rapacity. Okay, that's what lions represent. This idea of okay. So Solomon's throne, actually, probably not relevant to this because it's Babylon, but it does show the regalness of the lion. Solomon's throne had 6 steps leading up to it, and there was a lion at the end of each step. What is relevant to this as Babylon is that Babylon's Ishtar Gate has 120 lions along the street. It's just loaded with lions. So lions are this symbol of Babylon. And the passage also mentions eagle's wings in Daniel chapter 7, verse 4. Well, winged lions have been found at Babylon's ancient palaces. So we've really got this symbology that even archaeology says, this is Babylon. Okay, on page 19. The wings of an eagle. Eagles are symbols of speed and, again, rapacity, seizing things for plunder. Babylon was known for the swiftness of her attacks upon neighboring nations. I got that right out of Sonsino, the Jewish commentary. Yeah, so they're just known for just how quickly they would take over an enemy. Now, of course, Daniel chapter 7, from chapter 2, verse 4b, second half of verse 4, through the end of chapter 7 is all in Aramaic. We're going to get back to Hebrew in Daniel chapter 8, verse 1, but this part of Daniel is still in Aramaic. And the Aramaic word for Hebrew, or for eagle, is a word that refers to a high-flying, swooping vulture. But the equivalent Hebrew word is found in Habakkuk 1 and Lamentations 4. In Habakkuk 1, it's describing Babylon, how Babylon is going to be used to judge Israel. That's what Habakkuk 1 verse, because God's going to use Babylon, you know that, to judge Israel. And in fact, there are 6 annual fasts in Judaism, and one of them is going to be, you might want to know this, January 10th. I hope everybody's doing some kind of a fast at the beginning of the year, however the Lord might lead. But on January 10th is one of the four, there are 6 fasts, and 2 of them are 24-hour fasts. Really, Jews do 25 hours, but I do 24. And because that seemed right to me. But besides those 2 full fasts, there are 4 partial fasts, as it were. They're from sunrise to sunset, and they are all connected. Three of them are connected with the destruction of the temple. One of the 2 full fasts is the day the temple was destroyed. Of the 4, of those 3, yeah, I'll say it that way, one of them is a fast to remember the day that Nebuchadnezzar's siege against Jerusalem started. That's called the fast of the 10th of Tevet. Coincidentally, this year it's on January 10th. So if you want to participate in that fast, January 10th is the day to fast from sunrise to sunset, however you want to do it. But that's the Jewish practice, from sunrise to sunset. And what else can I tell you about it? You know, if I were, it's not if, because I'm going to do it. Okay, so how I see that fast relevant to us is, think of things like this: is our country under siege? Is our economy under siege? Is our morality under siege? You got the picture here? What things are under siege? Where is the enemy attacking? You see the picture? January 10th, the fast of the 10th day of the month of Tevet, T-E-V-E-T. Okay, so in Habakkuk 1:8, their horses also are swifter than leopards and more fierce than evening wolves. Their chargers charge ahead. Their cavalry comes from afar. They fly as the Nesser that hastens to eat. That's essentially the same word. Okay, or in Lamentations 4. See, and by the way, that's Babylon's judgment, Habakkuk 1:8. How God's using Babylon to judge Israel. Right, and in Lamentations 4, that entire book was written by Jeremiah as he watched the temple be destroyed. And so again, Babylon's judging. And here in Lamentations 4:19, our pursuers are swifter than the eagles of the heavens. So the eagle is used in these 2 verses to depict Babylon as a rapacious, vulturous kind of quick attacking nation. So Daniel chapter 7, verse 4 describes the first beast as a winged lion. Likewise, the head of gold at the top of the image that Nebuchadnezzar dreamed about was Babylon. Just fitting. And here's what we're going to start to see now. Everything from Daniel chapter 2 is going to fit like hand in glove with everything in Daniel chapter 7. And again, it'll fit with Revelation chapter 13. In Daniel chapter 2, I made most of the font small because we're not going to read it all. But in verse 36, Daniel tells King Nebuchadnezzar, this is the dream. Now we will tell the interpretation before the king. You, O king, are the King of kings. And in verse 38 at the end of it, you are this head of gold. And then the rest of the animals, the rest of the kingdoms are all listed in the same order. So we come to the bottom of the page there. Okay, the eagle loses its wings. The wings in Daniel chapter 7, verse 4 are plucked off. Okay, the lion loses two of its feet. How many feet does a lion have? But he ends up standing up on two. So the eagle loses two of its wings, and the lion loses two of his feet. This is symbolic of what happens to Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 4. He is smitten by God because he has great pride. Is not this kingdom, this great thing that I have built by my own power? And as soon as he says that, he goes to the ground like an animal, and he lives like a 4-footed animal until at the end of a interesting time, right? 7-year-long judgment, Nebuchadnezzar then stands, he recognizes who God is, he praises God, and he ends up standing up like a man on his feet. It's like, this is the picture of Babylon then. And on page 20, a man's heart was given to him. So Nebuchadnezzar's sanity returns to him when he acknowledges that he is only a man. I don't have the right to say this. I don't have the right to say that. I have certain rights and certain things that God has called me to do, and that's what I need to do. And when he recognizes that, he becomes a man. The second of the 4 empires is the Medo-Persians. Okay. So in Daniel chapter 7, verse 5, suddenly another beast, a second, like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth and between its teeth, and they said thus, arise, devour much flesh. I put that there so you can just, the picture again, just so you can just see the way, I'm not going to put it again in the handout, but you can just see the way it's going to track now. Okay, so the Medes and the Persians. We've gone now from the lion of Babylon to the bear of the Medes and the Persians. Now, since the first beast at the bottom of the page correlates with the head of gold in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, then the second beast is going to correlate with the chest and the arms of silver in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and it's the Medes and the Persians. This second animal represents 2 separate, though ethnically related people, the Persians and the Medes. Therefore, it was first envisioned standing simultaneously on both sides, and then the animal was stood to one side to symbolize that only one nation at a time would be dominant. First Media under Darius, and then second Persia. That comes out of Art Scroll. But all the Christian commentaries are going to say the same thing, but that's out of Art Scroll, a Jewish commentary. So it's raised up on one side. So this beast in Daniel 7, verse 5, these Medes and Persians have 2 distinct sides. The Medo-Persian Empire is a divided kingdom from the get-go. It is the Medes and the Persians. In Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar's dream is of a statue that has 2 parts, a chest and arms, the 2 parts. This is a 2-part kingdom. It is like a bear. Next to the lion, the bear is the most dreadful beast of prey known in Israel. Daniel chapter 7, verse 5 is where we have this bear. So in Amos chapter 5, we have a description of judgment that Amos is speaking towards the northern kingdom of Israel. Amos is a prophet who preaches or prophesies against the northern kingdom and against the southern kingdom. And in his prophecies against the northern kingdom of Israel, he says in verse 19, it will be as though a man fled from a lion and a bear met him. In other words, you guys got no hope. You got away from the lion and there's the bear. You can't read that and not be reminded of the fact that David fought both the lion and the bear as a young man before he was ever asked to put on Saul's armor and go fight Goliath. He refuses the armor and he goes to fight. He says, and I have fought lions and bears before. So as bears are less majestic than lions, so the Medes and the Persians are less majestic than Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. But the Medo-Persian Empire is very powerful and very ferocious, as are bears. I mean, if you run into an angry bear in the woods, you're in trouble. They can climb trees, and they can run faster than any man. So you're in trouble if he's angry. So the Medo-Persian Empire conquered Babylon. Isaiah also prophesied that that was going to happen. In Isaiah chapter 13, behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, who will not regard silver, and as for gold, they will not delight in it. Also their bows will dash young men to pieces, and they will have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eye will not spare children, and Babylon, the glory of the kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldeans' pride, will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, or as the NIV puts it, will be overthrown by God. So Babylon is going to be overthrown by the Medes and the Persians. The bottom of the page, it says in verse 5, it says the bear is raised up on one side. The Tyndall InterVarsity commentary points out that the bear may be raised up on its hind legs because it's ready to pounce. And that could fit, but it doesn't exactly sound like one side if he's raised up on his hind legs. It does fit, and Tyndall's a good commentary, good conservative commentary, it doesn't quite fit. Page 22, a more convincing argument, and popular among conservatives, even though Tyndall is conservative, a convincing conservative commentary, the more convincing one, is that the bear is raised up on one side because the Persian Empire is more powerful than the Medes. And then it says, arise and devour much flesh. A brown Syrian bear will weigh between 500 and 600 pounds. So they eat a lot, okay? And the three ribs could be three nations that the bear will conquer. Three ribs in its mouth, the three ribs are said to be, could be, according to ArtScroll, could be three Persian kings, Cyrus, Ahasuerus, which is Xerxes from the book of Esther, and Darius. Or Van Impe says it's Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt. Walvoord says it's the three main parts of the Medo-Babylonian Empire. But you got the picture there. Okay, so going over to page, or the bottom of that, rather, or underneath that, the third of the four. Let me just say also, the bear is told to eat the flesh. Bears, I thought I put it in here. Maybe I put it somewhere else.
It's right under Walvoord.
Oh, okay, good. Yep, there, I did put it in there. Bears primarily eat fruit, vegetables, roots, but this bear is told to eat flesh. So bears are not carnivorous. They do eat some. But what this shows is that God's really leading this bear. He's really leading the Medes and the Persians to conquer the world, to be this ferocious beast, because that's not in character for them. Okay, the third of the empires is Greece. Okay, it is compared, the third beast is like a leopard. It has four wings of a bird, and it has four heads, and dominion is given to it. Okay, like a leopard. The third kingdom is Greece. Similarly, the third kingdom in Daniel's vision. In Nebuchadnezzar's, the third part of the statue was Greece, and in Daniel's dream, the third part is also Greece. The four wings. It's probably worth saying, even though I put it in here. The leopard is less majestic than the lion, less majestic, but he's actually much faster. And so, what do these wings represent? Speed. Great speed. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon has two wings. Since nothing else is said about the wings, it's fair to assume that there's two. It doesn't say there's two, but it mentions wings. It's probably got two because it doesn't say anything else. Okay, but the fact that this animal and leopards don't have wings, so the fact that it has any wings, it's got four wings, so it's really emphasizing speed. And leopards are known for sudden speed, and that really fits what happened with Alexander the Great. Now, you got to realize this is spoken hundreds of years before Alexander the Great lived. Okay, so compare this with Alexander the Great. He conquered most of the known world by the time he was 33 years old. He conquered it so quickly that there was virtually no resistance to his armies. His kingdom spanned 11,000 miles from Greece to India, covering 1.5 million square miles, and it's said that he wept when there were no places left for him to conquer. He conquered the entire world in no time. 4 heads. The 4 heads on this leopard probably represent the four directions of the compass. So he's got power in all directions. He conquered the world. And then what ends up happening is his kingdom, when he dies, he has no descendant. He has no heir. So his kingdom then is given to his 4 generals, and they break it up. Okay, the first one, Lysimachus, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but Lysimachus, he gets Thrace and Bithynia. Cassander gets Greece. Seleucus gets Syria. And Ptolemy gets Egypt. Okay, the land of Israel is between Syria and Egypt. And this leads into this war that will go on for hundreds of years between the Seleucids, who are in the north in Syria, and the Ptolemies, who are in the south in Egypt, and they fight. And this is essentially the story of Hanukkah. In the story of Hanukkah, what ends up happening is Antiochus Epiphanes goes down into Egypt, and when he gets there, he meets a new rising power that is really not known yet on the world, Rome. And a Roman legate takes out a sword, and he draws a line in the sand around Antiochus Epiphanes, right in the sand. And he says, do you want war with Rome? Because if you step outside the line without telling your army to retreat, my army is commanded to kill you if they get nobody else. You're dead. Well, Antiochus Epiphanes was humiliated. He told his army to retreat. This is actually the story of Hanukkah. He tells his army to retreat, and he has to travel now back from Egypt to Syria. He goes through Israel, and now you have the story of the horrendous things that Syria does and that Antiochus Epiphanes does against Israel. By the way, according to the book of Maccabees, I don't know if it's true because the book of Maccabees is not Bible, Antiochus Epiphanes ends up getting saved or gives his life to the Lord in his last days. Is that true? I don't know. But it does kind of fit kind of the story, for example, of Nebuchadnezzar, who falls on the ground, and until he recognizes that God does whatever he wants and the God of Israel is the God. And I kind of think we're going to see Nebuchadnezzar in heaven. So that's my opinion. But I don't make that judgment, do I? Okay, so on page 23, the Antichrist, or the beast of Revelation 13, incorporates all of the characteristics of the previous 3 beasts. And he is the 4th beast. Revelation chapter 13, verse 2. The beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. See, he is not one of those 3. He is the 4th beast. He has those qualities. Now, notice that Revelation 13 does not mention the 4th dreaded beast of Daniel chapter 7, verses 7 and 8. That fact, the fact that it does not mention it, supports the argument that Daniel's 4th beast is somehow a resurrected form of the beast of Revelation, that there is a resurrected Roman Empire. Whatever that 4th beast is, seems to be resurrected. Okay. Now, let me just, I probably want to say this right here, because sometimes people, they try to box me into a corner in what I think. Okay. I do believe that there is a revived Roman Empire in the last days, and that is essentially connected with the Antichrist. But I think that when you say that, then some people, because they're so boxed into their way of thinking, that does not mean that Rome, the Roman Empire, is Rome as in Italy. Doesn't mean that necessarily at all, because Rome split and had 2 capitals. and there was a capital in Rome, and the other capital, named after Emperor Constantine, became Constantinople in Turkey, and that part of the Roman Empire lasted 1,000 years longer. And you have a really strong argument for the Antichrist not coming out of Rome, Italy, but instead coming out of Islam. So it is a revived Roman Empire. We'll get there as we go through Daniel. But it's not. I think Protestants tend to make that Rome, Italy because of bigotry. Because it has to be the Catholics. That's my opinion. I think we tend to do that. It has to be the Catholics. No, it doesn't. Okay? And, you can make the same argument about the Protestants. Look at Luther. Okay. Was he any better? I don't think so. All right, so the fourth beast, page 23. And I'll probably go to about 8 more minutes, probably, something. Please. That's not this at all. No, the bear being Russia, that's just, yeah. Yeah, it's just misusing. So words can have more than one meaning. You know what I mean? Like just in English, you're reading the newspaper and there's a word you don't know. So you look up the word and you find whatever that word is, and it's got 20 different meanings. That's happened to all of us, right? Half a dozen meanings at least. Happens all the time, right? And you don't try to make every one of those meanings fit the sentence. You have enough, all of us have enough sense to know that's not how English works. You look up the word, you find the various definitions, and it becomes evident to you. It doesn't mean that. It means this. Right? We've all been there, right? It's the same way in every language. Okay, so the bear of Russia has nothing to do with the bear of Daniel. Yeah. Please, Nancy. Diane. I'm not following you. Because you really have Western, like Rome, Italy is Western. Rome, Turkey would be more Eastern, if that's what you're getting at. But I just don't have any. I think we tend to, like, really as Protestants, and I probably wouldn't be a believer if the only choice was Catholic. I hate to say that, but it's probably the truth as a Jew. But I think Protestants tend to just do some things with Catholicism, which is just not fair. We all know when we talk among ourselves that salvation is pretty easy. In some regards, right? Like, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. But you better have right doctrine about Mary or you're not going to heaven. And you better have right doctrine about the saints or you're not going to heaven. And you better have right doctrine about purgatory or you're not going to heaven. And we have all kinds of things that we do. But is that what John 3:16 says? It really doesn't. Right? It's really Jesus. Right? So I just think we need to we Protestants who emphasize grace, maybe need to be more gracious.